Oscar Marques falando. Mesmo dia ainda, assistindo Porcaria Posicionamento, questionável da câmera, parte 6. 6. Ai. Deixa eu pegar os bagulho. Vamos lá. Aqui. Bermuda. Agulha. Agulha. Ó, agulha. Só o ventilador.
When Two Girls, One Cup burst onto the scene in 2007, there were pretty much two main types of reactions it would get. The first type, of course, being those sorts of reactions that you get in the reaction videos that are all over YouTube.
Oh, she's throwing up! Oh, she's got up!
But then you have a few people who are like, I've seen worse. A great many people who fell into the latter category had already been exposed to something that encompassed everything you saw in Two Girls, One Cup and so much more. Swap.avi. 1 hour and 3 minutes of pure fecal depravity. The story of Swap.avi, like many things in this period of time, begins on the Something Awful forums on January 20th of 2004. A user named Metis creates a thread entitled New Fetish, Scat Swapping. Metis begins by saying that he was browsing a website called scatinbrazil.com, and he states this so casually that you can just assume that this was a regular activity for him. But this time, during his Scat in Brazil fun times, he noticed something. They now offer a custom video service. This service allowed you to select your actress or actresses that you wanted, as well as your preferred fetish from their list of options. So essentially, this is basically like Cameo but decades earlier, with more poop. Once you make your selections, you write your script, submit it, and once the producers approve your script, your film is completed 10 days after payment. The only limitations are that there's no hardcore scenes, no armor-piercing objects, no very severe tortures, no menstruation, or any kind of blood. But most importantly, if you had a fetish that didn't involve any of these elements but it wasn't listed, you could just email them directly and see if the directors were down. Metis took this as a challenge to invent a brand new fetish. I had this idea to request a fetish/movie never done in porn or life before. I call it scat swapping. Scat swapping can be summed up quite eloquently in the following custom movie requests I sent to them. I've read the rules for requesting a movie to be made, and it said that if I have a fetish that is different from what is offered, you may be able to talk to the directors and work something out. I got a great idea while watching some scat movies recently. Scat swapping. This would basically be a movie where one woman's ass is penetrated by fingering and tonguing and fisting to make her anus very loose. A third woman will pull her anus open further and hold it open. Meanwhile, the second woman, the scat giver, shits in the first woman's open ass. The woman whose ass has been shit in will then shit the scat giver's shit back out, and everyone will eat it. If possible, I would also like it if the women were able to vomit in the woman's ass along with the shit, or afterwards, so that the vomit could also be shit out and eaten. Please get back to me and let me know if this is something you can accomplish in a video, and if so, how much it will cost. Thank you. I'm loving the mix of cordial, business-like language with detailed descriptions of what he'd like to see done with shit and vomit. At this point though, a lot of people on the forums are convinced that Metis is some kind of a troll, or just a guy trying to be funny. But he just keeps reiterating his status as some sort of scat aficionado, mentioning his preference for German and Brazilian scat over Japanese, which he finds disgusting. And he's also not a fan of diarrhea. It's gotta be mushy at most. And he also asserts that poop doesn't taste as bad as you think, and goes on to mention a favorite video in his collection. And funny you mentioned cooked food in scat. I have a large MPEG called pastascat.mpeg, where a dozen women eat pasta, get naked, shit in the pasta, eat the shit and pasta, then shit in each other's mouths, all while vomiting in each other's mouths and attempting to swallow the shit they get in their mouths. It's hubbed, S.A. Medits, and very popular lately. And a couple days after his initial request, he gets an email from the company. A scat movie with 2 girls costs US $350 plus shipping, and you could pay US $150 for additional girl. This is the price for you make your own video. What do you think about it? Please let me know. Foreboding ellipses. He can't afford all of this on his own though, so he starts setting up a PayPal account to accept donations. But he's not going to accept any until he gets confirmation that this is being made, so he waits on their response. In the meantime, forum goons question why this would get him off, and he goes in detail. Oh, I figured to not answer because when I reply too much in my own thread, people bash me. I like scat because it's demeaning to women in a sexual way. It makes them subordinate to the extreme because eating shit is the worst thing anyone can do besides cannibalism. Honestly, I feel like I rate that worse than cannibalism. Like if I had to choose, especially knowing that the foot taco guy, his situation didn't turn out so bad, I definitely would rather just eat human flesh. Even look back to Greek/Roman writings, the Bible even. There's scat in comical and also dramatic senses. It's always been there. It's one of the most disgusting taboos. And sometimes I like to get off to the depravity of a woman who is willing to swallow someone's shit. On a side note, here are the rest of my fetishes so you may further understand that I am simply deviant and enjoy so-called disgusting things, because I feel that they are not disgusting but beautiful. 1. Heavy or light facial acne. 2. Big noses. 3. Protruding chins. 3. Stretch marks/chubby chicks. 4. Female bellies. 5. Ugly girls. So you see, I don't believe there is one paradigm by which women and sexual interests must be judged. Because I can also like what everyone else likes at times, but I believe those who harshly judge the interests of others are close-minded. And still, even with all the highly detailed posts, many of which it almost seems like Metis got off a little writing them, a lot of goons weren't fully convinced of his commitment to scat. So they request that he verify this by taking a picture of himself with shit smeared on his chest, spelling the words comedy gold. And believe it or not, he did it. This had more or less fully sold the forum on the man's authenticity. And as this happens, he receives another response from the production company. For them to be sure that they can do this, he needs to send a more detailed script. He comes up with a set where there's 3 girls in a classroom. The students get excited by the teacher's ass, and then the teacher drops the chalk, bends over, and they just can't control themselves anymore. They start stripping and playing with themselves. And then the students finger and eat the teacher's ass to open it up a little bit. One girl shits into the teacher's ass, the shit gets double shitted into a mouth, yada yada yada, you get the gist. And he does have some final caveats. Emphasis, after the shit is expelled, should always be on swallowing and sharing the scat with each other. The girls should always open their mouths to show what they're chewing and swallowing. And if anyone vomits, it should be into the mouth or ass of another girl. He also requested all the girls call each other mommy. As things are moving along, he asked the forum if people would be willing to donate, and several are on board. He quickly gets a reply from the company who responded that reading the script made the girls very horny. Which I guess, good for them. I mean, what more can you ask than having a job you love? In any case, now it's time to start raising that $500. As an incentive, Metis offers up some of his personal belongings in exchange for donations. These belongings include PlayStation 2, Silent Hill 2 and 3, and before you say anything, Silent Hill 4 wasn't out yet. Tool albums, because of course the shit swap guy was into Tool, also KMFDM albums, and movies on DVD including Fight Club, Existenz, The Matrix, and many, many more. And also the donors would have their names in the credits, because you know, it's basically what a producer is. He also notes that it's $150 for an extra girl, so if they reach 500 fast enough, they could potentially raise $650 and get a 4th girl. And in a matter of days, that $650 stretch goal is reached. And just before the final payment comes up, Forum Goon Uke comes up with the idea to insert some something awful references into the video. Since the classroom, putting it on the chalkboard would make sense. The payment is made, the prizes are sent, and now the waiting game begins. It should just be 10 days. But of course, people are impatient, and even within that 10-day period, people are coming into the post and being like, hey, where's that poop swap movie I paid good money for? But he assures people that it's coming. 7 days into the wait, the original thread gets locked and Metis makes a new thread. Then the 10th day passes, though, and still no movie. But are they counting weekends? Do they have weekends off? We don't know. Did they mean 10 days from when they receive the payment, or when they start production? Or as user Conzilla suggested, maybe in Brazil, 10 days is actually 20 days. In the meantime, word of these shenanigans are spreading to other forums, including the Suicide Girls forums, where someone points out that this actually isn't a new fetish. In fact, there's already a name for it. The Manhattan Transfer, which, as a lifelong New Yorker, fills me with a sense of pride. Well, then more time passes, and we're well past the 20 days estimate of Brazilian time conversion. It's now March. The forum users are becoming increasingly convinced that either Metis got scammed or he himself is a scammer, which I guess, in a way, would kind of be the perfect crime. If you get your money stolen trying to produce Brazilian scat porn, you're probably not going to tell that many people you got scammed. Ultimately, Metis gets permabanned from the forums. A combination of not delivering on this video, the moderators simply finding him annoying, and also trying to dox the moderator who closed his original thread. So everyone just figures it's a thing that's not going to happen and everyone kind of moves on. That is, until March 31st. A user named Cannibal who knows Metis claims that he was sent 20 preview pics of the video, and it's almost done. Most are shocked that this thing actually turned out to be real, but a few people still aren't quite convinced it's legit. This could be another scat video they're just saying is his video, but there's a little detail that seals its authenticity. The chalkboard, full of something awful references. This maniac actually did it. But still, months pass, and it isn't until June 26th that a user named The Onion shows up, poop video in hand, as a torrent file. And it's basically just as Metis envisioned it. The film opens with saucy 80s guitar music, and DeVry Institute level CG animation of a farm with birds flying over it for some reason. Then the title hits, Scat Swapping School Swallow. The credits roll, and it should be noted the editor Marco Villanova is in fact the director of Two Girls, One Cup. And in fact, it's been a point of contention whether or not one of the girls in the video is in Two Girls, One Cup. But I can 100% confirm that she is. So what I did is, I sat there and looked for parts where their tattoos were visible, and sure enough, the one girl's neck tattoo matches up with Two Girls, One Cup. So she is in fact in both videos. They're in the classroom, and we're
Sim. Ó a fita do ultracoma.
É o quê?
A porta?
Daqui a pouco eu nem fiz vai querer vir dormir.
Tá. Pi.
told is a classroom by the Mickey Mouse and bananas in pajamas toys strewn about. You got colorful numbers stuck to the wall and a chalkboard too small for the students to ever actually learn anything, as the teacher writes something oval catchphrases like, "But did you get head?" Then the teacher drops the chalk, which naturally leads to an ass-eating frenzy, and then poop in the butt. From that point, for an hour, shit and puke go into every possible hole that shit and puke could possibly go into, and the whole thing leads to a big shit-covered giggle fest. There's honestly not too much for me to summarize about this, because as you might be surprised, it's a little thin on plot. But if you really want to find it and see for yourself, it can be found. Something that should be noted though, even though he was promised poop in the butt, it's more like the poop goes on the butt and then they shove it in by hand, which some users questioned the technicality of that Manhattan. Hadn't transfer. Does it count? So the Onion responded. Yeah, Cole for shitting in each other's asses, but these girls had that kind of runny shit, so they couldn't really do a clean transfer like he wanted, so cramming it in each other's asses was pretty much all they could do. Menace didn't display any sort of disappointment to me. He seemed to think this video was really funny, but in actuality, I think he can't stop jerking off to it. So there you go, Swap.avi had a happy ending after all. Although I have to say, I did see a lot of posts about people burning this movie and leaving them in unsuspecting places, under all kinds of misleading decoy names. You have to wonder if there's people out there who just happen to stumble upon this that way, and until this very moment had gone their entire lives wondering about what it was they had actually found. Today, I have another lost media case for you. This one caught my attention not just because it's a good song, but also because it takes us back to a website that was key in popularizing the most mysterious song on the internet, that being spiritofradio.ca. This one was posted by Peter in August of 2014, and we have this 30-second clip. This song's got a very freestyle kind of vibe, and I love freestyle. My playlists are full of it, and if you hand me the aux cord during a party, I'm very likely to put on Cover Girls or something like that. So you know I gotta find out who made this song so I can find the rest of their music.
Thank
so for this episode of Tales from the Internet, let's take a look at what we know about this song so far.
Oh, muito obrigado.
Today we're talking about an unidentified song that's been tentatively labeled Fond My Mind, based on what one of the lines in the song sounds like. Although the song's been floating around for quite some time, the search for it has gained some steam the past few months. The earliest post on Reddit that I saw about it was created by No Seacrest on r/Lostwave back in December of 2019. 80s/90s song, Nowhere to Run. Red Sector 1? This post links to the 2014 Spirit of Radio post, and this one calls it Nowhere to Run based on the first line that's said in this clip. The lead of this song potentially being by the band Red Sector 1 comes from a comment posted by Corey on the Spirit of Radio post. So, Red Sector 1 was a Canadian band that formed in 1991, and was active up until 1999. Let's compare their music to this clip of the song Fond My Mind. Assuming that this was recorded in the early 90s, I think their first album World Peace from 1992 is the way to go. So this band, Red Sector 1, to me sounds awesome, but at the same time, I really don't hear the comparison at all. As I said at the beginning, the freestyle vibe to me is very apparent in the clip, and when I listen to Red Sector 1, I'm hearing almost kind of a more industrial vibe. Just overall completely incompatible with the clip that we're looking for. And if we go later in their catalog,
We can hide and seek every day of the week. Oh, you can see these stars with me.
it gets more upbeat, but still a different sort of vibe from what we're looking for. In his post, No Seacrest noted that he was attempting to contact the band through their Facebook page. And ultimately, in the Discord for the most mysterious song on the internet, he would comment that he did manage to contact them through their SoundCloud. He spoke to a member of the band, Mike Davis, and Mike Davis confirmed that this is in fact not their song. Mike would also indicate that his current projects are Nasty Little Green Man and Surrounded by Spiders, in case you want to check those out. A Redditor named Game Monkey Dev made a few threads looking for the song, which would yield some suggestions like Annie Lennox, New Order, Depeche Mode, which once again don't really have the right vibe to me. And of course they're so popular that there's no way that this would just be unidentified if it was one of their songs. It's the same problem that comes up with the most mysterious song on the internet a lot. I think a lot of people aren't particularly familiar with all the different subgenres of old music, so they just kind of want to put it all under this old music umbrella, just the genre of old. But at this point, there really wasn't much to go off of other than people just shooting suggestions into the dark. However, a lot more clues were found when it was realized that Peter, who had posted the song Spirit of Radio, was not the first person to post this online. In fact, someone else had uploaded the song to What Zat Song, a website dedicated to identifying music, a year earlier in 2013. This user's name was Gsip Koi. Other accounts with the same name would be found, including a Last.fm account that had scrabbled similar music, implying that it was likely the same guy. And as Jay, a user who had popularized the search for this particular song, noted in the Mysterious Song Discord, since What's a Song has a clip cutoff of 30 seconds, and the Spirit of Radio clip was also 30 seconds, at this point, in 1992. This means that contrary to what he thought at first, this tape was most likely recorded in 1993. He also noted that this song was played on the radio a number of times. He even showed it to family members from Brazil who also remembered hearing this on the radio. And I had also noticed other Brazilians on Reddit saying that they had heard this song on the radio. But that being said, despite this band being played on the radio in Brazil, it's very likely that the band themselves are not from Brazil. He noted that this song was unlike a lot of the music he had heard from Brazil at the time, and this particular radio station was known for playing American and European hits. And several people also noted that the singer of this song doesn't sound like a native English speaker. A lot of people are convinced that the singer is either Italian or French. And to that point, Alan SM, a Brazilian user of the Discord server, gave some context for music in Brazil at the time. I'm Brazilian, so to give a bit of perspective from what I remember from the time I was a kid then, Eurodance was very popular at the time. In southern Brazil where I live, pretty much all the kids I knew listened to it. The artists being played on the radio were mostly Italian or German, but there were a few local artists as well. Freestyle was a big thing in Rio, they called it funk, but it wasn't popular here. If this song was made by a local artist, it would be natural to combine elements of freestyle and Eurodance. Another thing which might be helpful, at the time it was very common for smaller record companies to release compilations of Eurodance songs, comprised of a few popular songs and many unknowns. They would partner with popular radio stations and name the compilations after them. For example, something like the hottest songs from radio whatever. It could be that this song was on a compilation like that. He had also noted that Italian music in particular was very popular with Brazilian DJs at the time, to which a user Silbereisen added that Italians at the time were churning out such a sheer mass of dance music that the odds are good that this could be a lost Italo track. Meanwhile, Gabber did actually manage to contact Transamerica. None of the DJs who would have been around then were still working for them, but they did direct him to a list of popular songs from each year. This song, however, was not among any of the lists. And in the comments of JK's YouTube upload, another potential lead was raised. This one from a commenter named Randolph who had mentioned he had heard the song too, but on Danish radio. So I might be completely wrong and confusing this for another song of course, but I'm pretty sure this song used to play on the Danish radio station The Voice in the mid-90s, and that a sample of it was used in like one of those radio advertising stingers way into the aughts. The Voice had some kind of connection to Bulgaria and later opened a radio station there. A user named Maximus Vergara found an uploaded broadcast from The Voice, and it definitely sounds like a station that would have played this sort of music. Unfortunately, this particular track was not in the uploaded broadcast. So right now we got a bunch of clues, but no real solid leads. Some artists and compilations have been looked into, but nothing's really turned up anything. My hope with this video is that, like a lot of the recent lost media cases that have been solved by viewers of the channel, that it just reaches a large enough audience that someone happens to just know it. And I've noticed that looking at the demographic information for my channel, one of the top countries that watches me is actually Brazil. So there actually is a pretty good chance that one of you watching has actually heard this song on the radio before too, and maybe you even know what it's called. If you do know what it's called, of course, leave a comment, send me a message somewhere, let me know what it is. But for now, that's all for the most mysterious song in Brazil. I think that's what I'm going to title this one. I'm sure someone's going to tell me there's other more mysterious songs in Brazil, but you know, we
Flash tem toda a segurança jurídica e é aceita em milhões de lugares. Legal, né?
Espetáculo que realmente importa para cada de nós.
We got to keep some kind of consistency here. The end of 2023 was an exciting time for Lost Media. A lot of stuff got found, including two of the songs that I've covered on this channel in the past. Those being the Filthy Frank Kenya song and the most mysterious song in Brazil, aka Fond My Mind. And in both cases, I think the stories behind how they were found were just as interesting as the discoveries themselves. The way the Filthy Frank song was found will completely change your perspective on Lost Media searches. As for the Brazilian song, that might be the most drama-filled search for any piece of Lost Media that I've ever seen, to the point where the community itself almost becomes a bigger story than the song. So for today's video, let's take a look at both of these recent discoveries. Let's begin with the Filthy Frank song. I originally covered this song in December of 2020, but let's have a quick refresher. In 2013, the song was featured in a Filthy Frank video called How to Pick Up Girls in 30 Different Cultures. In the part about Kenya, there's a song in the background. Nobody had been able to identify it, and even Frank himself said he had no idea what it was. Then on December 2nd of this past year, a YouTuber named NB Duckman covers the story. His video clocks in at over 15 minutes and goes a bit further in depth than mine did, including confirming some of the evidence that was just rumors in the past, and also finding some brand new leads. He also put up a $300 reward of his own money for finding the song. At the time, NB Duckman had just under 5,000 subscribers, and the video itself only had 856 views. But incredibly, it was one of those 856 people that found the song, settling this decade-long mystery in just under 7 hours. The viewer, a New Zealander named Damn Peggy, explained how he found it. On YouTube, he searched Ugandan gospel before 2013. He found a song called Yesu Mimi Nakupenda Sana by Samuel Olowo. This wasn't the song, but it sounded similar. He noticed that in the description it said East Ugandan, so he tried searching East Ugandan gospel before 2013. And there it was. Second result, uploaded 12 years ago. Katanda Alinawe by David Sun JC. Throughout the search, you have people doing things like trying to contact Ugandan pastors and find obscure record stores, and there it was the whole time, just a YouTube search away. NB Duckman goes into more detail about the song's discovery in his video about it. So I highly recommend watching his as well as subscribing to his channel because he has way too few subscribers for the quality of his work. And I really like that this mystery was solved this way because it puts a lot of things into perspective. You know, you've had people all over the internet that were hyper-focused on this search for like a decade. My video about it has about 350,000 views, and over the years I've had people message me with various leads that kind of went nowhere. And then 856 people watched this guy's video and it's solved in 7 hours. All because one of those people searched slightly differently from how people did in the past. So if you ever thought, oh, I'd like to cover this story, but there's no point because Wang did it already, clearly you shouldn't be thinking that way. Now let's go to Brazil, Fond My Mind. I covered this song back in July of 2021. The song was recorded off of Transamerica Radio in Brazil at some point in the early 90s, and was referred to as Find My Mind or Nowhere to Run because of lyrics in the song that people could make out. After my video came out, I hadn't heard that many promising leads on it. The main thing I heard about it only happened this past summer, and it was when a copyright troll was trying to claim the song, much like what happened with the original Mysterious song. If you watched my video about the song, you'll recall that JK ran a channel hosting a number of lost songs, including Find My Mind. The channel became a target of this copyright troll because, you know, it's a lot easier to pretend you own a lost song than one that someone else clearly owns. Ultimately, YouTube took the channel down, ignoring the evidence that this person did not own the song. Honestly, on top of being a dick move, it's just stupid. Instead of raking in free money from false claims, they issue strikes, killing the channel. It's like a parasite that kills its host and dies itself as a result. But I've noticed that throughout the years of covering lost media, there's just something about this topic that attracts people who really don't want anything other than to ruin the search. And even one person can do a lot of damage. In terms of actual promising leads though, I hadn't heard anything until this past September. People started to message me about the song and its creator possibly being discovered. And I would also receive messages from people saying that this whole thing is a hoax. So here's what happens. On September 24th, a user named Skirty arrives, noting that the search seems relatively inactive. He also says that although a lot of the search has led people to look into European or Japanese artists, he's convinced it's a Brazilian that made it. And as a Brazilian himself, he's going to reach out to local radio stations and broadcasters and try and find any leads. And a bit later, he has something that he thinks is promising. So there is a theory that Find My Mind was based on a sample of an Italo disco song called Each Time I Touch You by Valentino. And if you listen to the intro to that song, you can definitely hear it. Now, Valentino was previously a really big lead for this case. It ultimately went nowhere, but it was one of those leads that kept on coming back. So every time a new person came around and said, hey, how about Valentino? Everyone that had been around for a while was like, ugh. It became such a meme that Robotical Halloween in the Discord server created a message from Valentino.
I did not sing Find My Mind, you fucking idiot.
So here comes Skirty bringing back Valentino, but he's not saying that Valentino did it. He's saying a Brazilian sampled Valentino's song, and according to Skirty, he said this was very common throughout the 90s up until around 2006, where Brazilian cover bands would take an Italo disco song or a Eurodance song like this and remix it. So he figured that this was another one like that just didn't take off. He would later notice a comment on a fan-made interpretation of a Radio Cidade broadcast playing Find My Mind. The comment mentioned that there's an old cover band in Recife called Maquinas na Pista, and if it's made by someone there, they probably know who. Skirty found the band, who were actually still active, and shot them a message about it. And surprisingly, in a few days, they actually responded. The member he spoke to told them that the song's not theirs, but they know who made it. They said the song had been made by two men from Recife, produced by Eddie Valcan, with vocals by Sergio Dorado. They said this with complete certainty and even linked to their profiles. And although this was a huge lead, there was some skepticism, which, with the amount of trolling that goes on in lost media, it's understandable. But Skirty took a bit of offense at the skepticism, asking if people didn't think it was possible for a Brazilian to have made this song. or if they're just not taking him seriously because he's new to the search. In any case, everyone seems to be in agreement that this is a lead that shouldn't be ignored. Skirty found samples of Sergio and Eddie's work, including a Pet Shop Boys remix produced by Eddie. The next day, another Brazilian Redditor named Chrono Zedu would get in touch with Eddie. Eddie confirmed that this was his song. He said the actual name of it was Feels Like a Wish. He also sent the lyrics, and it's important to note that the lyrics he sent include words that appear before the clip we've all heard. That means that if he's telling the truth, there's a completely lost segment of the song that nobody's heard before. So providing that segment would be absolute proof that he is the real deal. Meanwhile, Skirty had been talking to Sergio, who provided much of the same information. But Sergio also said that he's not actually the vocalist. He said it was actually a man named Andre who sung on that song. He concludes by talking about the conversation with Eddie. Eddie was very happy and surprised to see such a commotion in search of the authors of a sound he made years ago, which was a very personal work about platonic love, and also sharing a little more of his portfolio with Kronos. He showed to Eddie about Wang's video, and he had no idea about the size and proportion of his work nowadays. I will share some screenshots about this conversation soon as we get more information and concrete proofs. But here is my first conversation with Kronos, also some screenshots about his first conversation with Eddie. So this is everything we have now.
Qual será o roteiro dessa vez? Segunda, dia 3, às 8 da noite, São Paulo e Novo Horizontino. São as quartas de final do Paulistão. É ao vivo, na mar.
I'm not the best doing this, and as I said on Discord, I'm just another Brazilian believing on the potential of my country to make some bangers. Meanwhile in the Discord, Eduardo Rodriguez, who I believe is Kronos from Reddit, had gotten word from Eddie that he's looking through hard drives and will send over the audio. Skirty says in Discord, "Looks like me and Eduardo Rodriguez solved the mystery. Just waiting for the recorded song and real proofs, but I have no doubt." Although there's a lot of excitement about this, people aren't quite ready to declare it solved yet. Because, how many times has a person claimed to be behind a song and then it turned out they're full of shit? But, Skirty is taking people's skepticism as an affront to his country. I'll come back later. This guys really don't want to believe that this song was created here. Lol. Yeah, I'm probably a troll, just trolling everyone. Come on. So, one of the main reasons that a lot of people were ruling out Brazil was that the synths identified in the song wouldn't have been available there at the time. Skirty interprets this as people saying Brazil is a poor country, which he takes offense to. But as it turned out, there actually was an explanation for this. According to his conversation with Eduardo, Eddie was living in New York when he made the song. In fact, on top of the synths used, that makes even more sense because New York at the time was the center of the freestyle movement. So if you're a producer of electronic music living in New York City at that time, there's no escaping the kind of vibe that you hear in this song. In any case, a few users explained to Skirty why everyone is so skeptical here and not quite ready to declare the mystery solved, and he understands. Another user named Minish had also been speaking to Eddie. As a freestyle and Italo dance producer herself, she was picking his brain about the gear he used. And the gear list he sent her lined up with what could have been used to make the song. But then he said something that threw a lot of people off. Now instead of just posting the song, he wanted to make a remaster, which he would post along with some new music. A few people were worried that this meant he was going to rebuild the song from scratch and try to fake ownership, but that's generally not what a remaster is. You're just adjusting levels and whatnot to try and make it sound better. It's totally understandable that a guy who made this song decades ago would want to approach it differently now, especially when he has so much attention and in his mind he wants to put his best work forward. And as Ultra J and Rain pointed out in the Discord, this isn't unusual, and there's other examples of artists of found lost media songs doing remasters. That being said, there was a sentiment that I saw a lot that I agree with. It's that attempts to remaster older songs often make them worse. Remastered songs often wind up feeling sterile and overproduced. It's also a process that could take some time, maybe a month or more, and he didn't seem willing to upload the original version. And then he'd later tell Minish that he was looking for a label to distribute the music, which is an even longer process. While this is all going on, people are trying to verify the song by looking up registration info. He provides a user named Pencil D with information about the song. I produced that song in 1989 and registered in 1991. My project was named Station K. The name of the song is Feels Like a Wish. I created it when I was in New York City, and the lead vocals by Andrew N. He then also mentions the remaster to Pencil. Pencil responds by asking if he can hear some of the unfinished version. Here's how Eddie responds. "Dude, I'm busy and don't have time for that. But I'm the creator. Don't you believe me?" Now, the server had a rule about not contacting leads without permission, so you don't scare them off. But apparently, it was actually Eddie who initiated the conversation with him after he added him on Instagram. This exchange now starts to turn a lot of people against Eddie. You know, why is he being so defensive all of a sudden? And people can't seem to find this information on any known database. Now at this point, I was completely unaware of any of this ongoing drama, but I had heard that this was potentially solved, so I did an extremely rare thing and I popped onto Discord to ask about it. I was on the fence about making an update video at that point because I knew that we still hadn't gotten the remaster, and I didn't want to put the video out and then everybody starts bothering that guy and we just never get anything. And in fact, at that time, they'd actually been trying to crack down on people hitting him up after a few recent incidents, including a guy posing as an Italian DJ to try and trick him. So I decided to hold off on making my video. But you know, then nearly a month passes and he's still telling people, oh, it's coming soon. He's working on the album to release with it, but it's almost here. You have this thing going on where you have some people ready to declare the whole thing a hoax, where you have other people ready to declare it solved. It's getting labeled as Eddie's song on What's That Song and Genius. So it's decided that Jay will message Eddie one more time. Hi Eddie, I'm the person who popularized the search for the song which you claim is called Feels Like a Wish and created by you. Over the last month, a couple people have been in contact with you about the song, but I'm not sure what's going on with them now. So I decided to message you myself. I hope that's okay. I know you mentioned remastering the song before releasing it, but I'm wondering if you could first just provide the original recording for us. I'm also wondering if you can tell me more information about the song, such as who exactly the Andre that sings on it is. I look forward to hearing back from you. Thank you. Eddie responds by reiterating a lot of the information he's already given people, such as the dates and the song being made in New York, and that he's working on getting radio distribution. So Jay sends a follow-up asking for more info about Andre, such as his last name. Also, if he could upload the unremastered version as proof. Here's what happens. I have more to do than prove this song is mine to everyone. There have been plenty of people for both this song and others with unknown authorship who have claimed the song for themselves, but have done little to nothing to prove it. So forgive us if we're skeptical. This message sends Eddie over the edge, prompting a response that's up there with the E-Bombs World Yiddish Cup email. My nobleman. And why should I have to prove anything to you or anyone else in the world? You're so pathetic. I don't need to prove anything to anyone. The song is mine and fuck it. I don't give a shit if you believe it or not. I have a lot, much more to do with my life than talking to strangers of dubious character or proving something to someone else. Fuck off your impetulance. Do you really think I'm a fool? Do you really think you're fooling me and think I don't know you're a criminal? You have a fake profile, evasive and lacking in information, and you are there trying to scam people or trying to illegally appropriate the works of others. So listen well, and just remembering that if you or anyone else in the world make an unauthorized use of my song, I'll file a lawsuit up your ass. At this point, almost everyone who sees this message thinks he's a troll now. I started getting a lot of messages saying he's definitely a hoaxer. And also, calling people noblemen becomes the greatest meme I've seen in all of Lost Media. Apparently, as PM Me Awesome Songs pointed out, it's a Brazilian slang to call someone nobre, noble, like you'd call someone my friend as an opening. He just used nobleman instead. That being said though, a lot of people, including people who spoke to him in the past, just said he's probably getting annoyed from getting so many messages all of a sudden. And also looking at it, he probably legitimately thought this was some kind of scam. Furthermore, even if he is a bit of a hothead, that doesn't necessarily mean he's lying. And it is the most complete lead the search has pretty much ever seen. In any case though, it's clear that either he's gonna post it or he's not gonna post it, so there's no need to belabor it. The search has to go on. A Discord user named Opals wound up finding a dentist in Recife named Andre Nobrega on Facebook. Then a Brazilian user of the server, Sam K, who runs a YouTube channel about Lost Media called GK's Vivo, messaged him in Portuguese, with the idea being it's probably better off moving forward that only Brazilians contact these people. Andre would confirm that he was the singer and Eddie was the composer, but he says that he doesn't have anything that can prove it, so he should contact Eddie about it. Womp womp. But there was another potential person to contact. In a 1998 Brazilian TV report about electronic music in Recife, Eddie was interviewed. But there was another man there, William Paiva. We need to find this guy. This is our Alvin Dean. And William actually turned up pretty quickly. Sam would find him on Instagram and send him a message. And
Seja qual for o seu projeto ou estilo, mostre para o mundo com o domínio da Hostinger. Compre o seu hoje. Hostinger 3.2 online.
3 days later, William reported that he has a copy of the original tape that went to radio at the time, but he stated that the song is from Eddie. Williams stated that he will look for the tape tomorrow in the studio, but does not know the state. And he stated that the version that we possibly know is cut at the beginning. The next day, Sam would receive another message from William. William had found the tape, and he sent Sam this clip. People still weren't fully convinced though, because it didn't show the missing intro. Just the part that's already been heard, so there could be some kind of trickery going on here. But then, William joins the Discord himself, and as he's digitizing the song, he posts this. This was the lost intro, the thing that I said at the beginning of the video would prove its legitimacy. And then on December 14th, William would post this to YouTube.
I don't know what makes me dream, but I know what makes me think. You got blue eyes like the sky.
That was it. Find My Mind had been found, which also means that, much to the chagrin of a lot of people involved in this search, it was Eddie all along. William clarified too that he had no actual involvement in the creation of the song. He was just acquainted with Eddie by being involved in the same local scene. Eddie comments, "Finally, the truth came out. A slap in the face to everyone who doubted me. Thanks, William Paiva. You rock." And on December 20th, Eddie would finally post his version of the song. And in the comments of William's video, Eddie mentions that he's currently working with a filmmaker to make a documentary about the song and its discovery, to give us the perspective of a guy who learned that his 30-year-old song is suddenly the center of an internet mystery. And thus, the case of Find My Mind has been solved. But the drama still persists as Skirty does his victory lap, and the rest of the server fights with him. It's always been really funny to me how, of all the topics I cover on this channel, Lost Media is by far the most G-rated, inoffensive stuff. It consistently creates the most drama-filled communities around it. This has got to be like some kind of psychological thing that should be studied.
Pornography is something that has historically always been enjoyed in private, away from the judging eyes of friends, family, and the general public. For the most part. And the more depraved it gets, the further we retreat into the shadows, hoping to hide our shame from the light of day. I can think of at least one glowing exception to this behavior, though. An exception in which, rather than keeping it secret, millions of people opted to share it with those closest to them, and sometimes, millions of complete strangers on the internet. This is the story of the time a filthy porn clip got turned into a communal experience for people around the world. This is the story of 2 girls, 1 cup. It goes without saying that YouTube is almost definitely going to demonetize this video, but thankfully, this video is sponsored by NordVPN. If you're the type of person who's for some reason invested in finding out the rich backstory analytics account. And if we look at the analytics screenshot that Cajones posted, it was on August 20th that the site really began to take off. It was at that point that 2 Girls 1 Cup had begun to make its way far outside the original intended audience of offtopic.com users and became a viral shock site in the great tradition of goatc.cx, meatspin.com, or lemonparty.org. But unlike a lot of the shock sites that came before it, 2girls.com evolved into something that people weren't looking at by accident, but on purpose. And it was the trend of people reacting to 2 Girls 1 Cup that really propelled it to the heights that it reached. The first such video is believed to have been uploaded to YouTube on September 21st, 2007 by a user named Fartnewt. As of the time of this recording, Fartnewt's video now has over 14 million views. And Fartnewt's success inspired a whole wave of people to start putting their reactions out there. Practically overnight, YouTube became flooded with people sharing their reactions to 2 Girls 1 Cup, and their family members' reactions too. And although reaction videos had existed to some extent previously, what we were witnessing here was the true genesis of the personality-driven
ClickUp is an all-in-one project management system that can literally do anything, and I mean anything. Use it for documents, task management, chats, email, and underneath it all, you've got AI doing all the busy work for you. It can reprioritize your tasks, suggest subtasks, transcribe meetings,
reaction format that would wind up taking over YouTube for years. It's kind of fitting that the reaction video genre was basically spawned by literal shit. And on October 11th, the site's traffic literally doubled overnight, going from 100,000 views to 200,000 views. And those numbers would more than double the next month. At this point, Cojones had hired a tech-savvy friend to help deal with the maintenance of the site, and additionally, he began to monetize it with ads. But the money wasn't really what excited Cojones. Rather, it was the thrill of being the man behind the shit-stained curtain. At this point, everything was Rick Ross, boss, and we felt on top of the world. Not because we were making some money off the site, but more so because of all the attraction the site had received. I felt like an undercover superstar. I would walk around Chicago and listen to people talk about 2 Girls, 1 Cup, and I would always giggle inside knowing that it was me who created the site. It was kind of a cool feeling, but at the same time I felt awkward for exposing something so disgusting. The fad had gone from something that was intended really just for the consumption of a specific message board to a full-blown mainstream sensation. It was at this point that celebrities started to weigh in. You had John Mayer making his parody of it, and although he was eating yogurt in it as a spoof, there were a lot of people who questioned the authenticity of the shit in the video. A lot of people thought that perhaps they had done some kind of movie magic, like what they did with Marmalade and Salo. There was a lot of debate over this, and fittingly, it was summarized really well by perhaps the only other figure in porn as mainstream as 2 Girls, 1 Cup, Ron Jeremy.
They probably substituted it for pistachio ice cream.
No, I believe that's the real deal.
No, I don't think it is.
You don't think it is? All right, keep watching.
Might have substituted.
Keep watching.
How could they go that much? Girls like that don't go that much.
What, do you think they're men?
You've had girlfriends this
You
small.
saw them go to their butt. You think they're men?
Girls have little balls when they go to the bathroom.
And this debate was actually more important than people realized. In fact, the US government was quite concerned with the provenance of the shit featured in 2 Girls, 1 Cup. In 2005, under the Bush administration, the Department of Justice created a new organization known as the Obscenity Prosecution Task Force. Their job was to prosecute people involved in the production and distribution of porn that they believed to be in violation of obscenity laws. And one of the men who was prosecuted by this organization was a pornographer and self-described shock artist named Ira Isaacs. When Isaacs was prosecuted, there was a lot of confusion created by news sites that falsely reported that he was the creator of 2 Girls, 1 Cup. He was actually prosecuted for a number of different scat films, but the confusion was created when he used 2 Girls, 1 Cup to justify his defense of Hollywood Scat Amateurs 10. His arguments would become popularly dubbed the 2 Girls, 1 Cup defense. Until I saw 2 Girls, 1 Cup, I wouldn't have thought so many regular people would want to watch this stuff. There are millions of people watching it. For now, it's probably most people like the shock value of it. This is art that asks questions about what's ugly, acceptable, taboo. It takes something mundane, like going to the bathroom, and puts it in a new light. It inspires people. Just because it has sex in it, and deals with a subject matter that isn't typically in art, doesn't mean it isn't art. Getting the court to decide that Isaac's films were in fact art was key to fighting off the obscenity case. But unfortunately for Ira Isaacs, the court didn't see things his way. After several years of mistrials and delays, it was found that Ira Isaacs was guilty of obscenity. And because of this, Ira Isaacs was sentenced to 4 years in prison. And due to the shabby reporting of a number of websites and the fact that few people actually saw their corrections, this led to a rumor that the creator of 2 Girls, 1 Cup was actually in jail for making it. In fact, the creator of 2 Girls, 1 Cup is very much free and has never been jailed for his work. 2 Girls, 1 Cup was actually the trailer to a larger film entitled Hungry Bitches. This film was created in Brazil by a director named Marco Antonio Fiorito, and although the film was perfectly legal to distribute inside of Brazil, when it made it to the US, it got on the radar of Bush's task force. And it was on September 5th of 2006 when a criminal complaint was raised against a Brazilian man in Florida named Danilo Simões Crozes. The complaint details a several-year investigation beginning in 2003 into two film distribution companies, Dragon Films and Lexus Media. It describes in detail a film entitled Toilet Man 6, as well as a number of other films all created by Marco Antonio Fiorito. To help the judge along, it also goes on to define terms like scat, bukkake, and fisting. And the complaint ends with a statement implicating Danilo. As noted above, Crochet is identified as the officer, director, treasurer, president for Lexus Multimedia on filings that were submitted to the Florida Secretary of State. In addition, Crochet opened and controlled the bank accounts of Lexus Multimedia and received portions of the proceeds that were made from the sale of videos and downloads by Lexus Multimedia, among other things. And at the request of Danilo's attorney, Marco Antonio Fiorito issued a statement. This statement is the only publicly known record of Fiorito addressing his work. He begins it by discussing his own history. In 1994, I became interested in producing films, and on my own, I learned the art of filmmaking. In 1996, I started a business with my wife, Joelma Brito Fiorito, who used the artistic name Leticia Miller. The business was producing fetish films. At that time, my wife and I did everything. We were the actors, the producers, as well as the filming. Sometimes we hired other people to operate the camera. We made these films to sell. When we started, the only films that we made were about feet fetishes. I placed ads in the local newspapers offering fetish films. The people that were interested called a phone number in the ad, and I told them about the available fetish films. The buyers would place an order, and I would personally deliver the videos to their homes, where I would collect the money for the sale of the videotapes. When the business started making money, we started to hire other actors for the films. He goes on to explain how he eventually partnered with a man named Luis Vilas Boas, who was much more adept at business and helped him grow things. In 1999, I received a call from Luis Vilas Boas, who had seen the newspaper ad and he was interested in knowing more about my business. Luis and I decided to meet personally. We met and I explained to Luis how my business operated. Luis suggested that the business could be on the internet. I did not understand anything about how the business could operate via the internet, so Luis explained and showed me how it would operate on the internet. I found this idea very interesting, and that is when Luis and I began our partnership. The partnership was called Dragon Films. Luis helps Marco grows the business, he begins acquiring URLs, he begins hiring new staff, and that's where Danilo comes into the picture. And this is where it starts to get pretty funny, because Marco did not like Danilo. I have met Danilo. I don't remember exactly when I met him for the first time, but I'm sure it was some years after I started the business with Luis. As I have mentioned before, I am a fetishist and I consider myself a person that is a compulsive fetishist, and therefore I spend a lot of money on fetishism. Luis noticed this licentious behavior. It was at this time that Luis introduced me to Danilo. Our first meeting was at my home in Sao Paulo and Danilo came with Luis. I found out that the reason Luis introduced me to Danilo was to show me that if I could control my addiction, I could be a more successful person financially. When I was introduced to Danilo Croce, I didn't like him. Since that time, I have seen Danilo a few times and always in social events, not ever in any business context. In fact, Marco's dislike for Danilo was so intense that he actually went out of his way to troll him. I always used my name in the fetish films that I produced. Leticia Miller used her name in the fetish films. Many of the actors in the fetish films use fictitious names. I decided, as a joke, to put the name Daniel Cross on a person in the fetish films. When I used the name Danny Cross, I already knew Danilo Croce, and I knew that Daniel Cross is the American way of saying Danilo Croce. So I thought it would be a joke to use the name Danny Cross, representing an influential person participating in my films. Sometime later, Luis told me that he had met Danilo and that he made a comment about his name joke, and that Danilo became very mad because of this. Luis also told me that Danilo requested that his name be removed from all of the films. I didn't do this because I was not worried about the repercussions of this fact, and also because Danny Cross is not Danilo Croce's name. He also commented on the legality of his films. The films that I make are not illegal in Brazil, and I didn't imagine they were illegal in the United States of America. I have already searched the internet, saw many American companies that sell this type of film on the internet, so I didn't imagine these films were illegal in the USA. Nobody ever told me that producing or having this type of film would be illegal in the USA. And because I don't participate in any of the administrative matters of the business, I don't know any of the contact from the American government informing us that these films, or the sale of these films, was considered illegal. If I knew that the sale of these films via the internet was illegal, I would have stopped because the money is not the main reason that I make these films. And finally, he remarked about what's perhaps the most important part. Was the poop real? I have already made fetish movies with scat/feces using chocolate instead of feces. Many actors make scat films, but they don't agree to eat feces. Ultimately, Marco's statement did no favors for Danilo, who was sentenced to 3 years probation and ordered to pay $98,000. And I imagine Marco had a good laugh when he got that news. As for the Two Girls One Cup website, Cajones explains its decline. As mentioned earlier, the site was reaching its peak. The following month, December 12th to January 12th, the site brought in 8 million visits, to then followed by January-February, which brought in 5 million visits. At this point, we had been cut from all revenue sources due to the site nature and were losing money quick. We were barely breaking even for server costs and all the other good stuff. We eventually sold the site in February and washed our hands with it. The new owners did some super shady shit like require a credit card to view the video, which I was totally against for, but there wasn't anything I could have done. And although he could not legally give an exact figure, Cajones stated that it was at least 6 figures he was paid. And thus concludes the Two Girls One Cup story. If you like this video, you'll probably also like my one about Rotten.com. I'm out of here.
And once again, don't forget to check out my sponsor, Match Masters. Scan the QR code or click the link in my description.
Microsoft Paint, torture, atomic bombs. What do these have in common? Their capacity, of course, for extreme psychological terror. Since the dawn of DeviantArt, and possibly even before, inflation artists have been blowing up the airwaves with some of the scariest artwork imaginable. But that all was
no.
was before Lashana Ball, a character whose admirers have produced some of the weirdest fan art I have ever seen in my life. An unholy alliance of ball inflation, schizo posts, and Total Drama Island. So, who would unironically come up with this? Who are the people that get off to inflating themselves? And why is so much Lashana fan art like that? This is everything you've ever wanted to know about Lashana Ball. This is Bad Art History.
Obama.
So judging from a few previous comments, many of you are somewhat familiar with the Ball herself. And I figure, as my way of saying thank you to 100,000 of you, I do a quick dive into your most requested topic. So for those out of the loop, Lashana Ball is this obscure fan art of the character Lashana from the 2007 Canadian cartoon Total Drama Island, depicted as a perfectly round ball with a head, gazing seductively at the viewer. Following her random and sudden explosion onto TikTok in 2020, worshippers of all Lashana shapes and sizes amassed on Tumblr and Twitter, obsessed with the spherical miracle. Fan artists and ironic gays were having a ball, if you will. But many more were completely baffled by this image's sudden popularity. Because while it may just look like some silly, absurd fan art, many others correctly observed that it actually looks a lot more like DeviantArt inflation porn. So right off the bat, was this another case of fetish art accidentally being memed into popularity, or was it truly just that weird? And is there really a community out there of people who just get off to Microsoft Paint circle tool inflation art? The answer is gonna blow you away. But before we can get there, we gotta enter the home of the Flying Dutchman. 2011, somewhere in the Netherlands. GwenFan XXXX makes an account on DeviantArt and begins posting characters, real and original, from Total Drama Island. However, this wasn't GwenFan's only account. As a longtime fan of Total Drama Island, she'd been hard at work posting her other illustrations to fan sites far and wide. And on fanpop.com, amongst a sea of Gwen and Lindsay smut, appeared a collection of TDI characters. Lashana, Owen, Izzy, etc., inflated into ball shapes. Why she never put this masterpiece on DeviantArt remains a mystery, but it was her username all the same. Now, whether it was through automated web scraping, meaning that a bot had saved the Lashana image and uploaded it somewhere else, or through a repost that's been lost to time, Lashana Ball miraculously ended up deep in Google image search, and this was enough to get the ball rolling. 2012, a user on a Spanish language demotivational meme page uploads the second known instance of the Lashana Ball meme. 2013, Tumblr user XJ9kin uploads what is unmistakably Lashana Ball fan art, even though it makes no direct reference to her. And though I mentioned that this meme blew up in 2020, I vividly remember seeing this on Tumblr in like 2013 because it became an inside joke with my group of friends for the rest of 9th grade. So in case you feel gaslit by like the recent popularity of this meme, don't. And after the 2010s, Lashana Ball had all but faded into obscurity until June 14th of 2020, when trailblazing Twitter user Jads, after being rudely asked just what the fuck their profile picture was supposed to be, responded simply, Lashana Ball OC, and the rest was history. Surreal Lashana TikToks flooded the platform, and artists from all corners of the globe assembled to create Lashana Cube, Lashana Rhombicosydodecahedron, Lashana Bass Pro Shop Pyramid, and even La Bamba. And if you Google Lashana right now, Lashana Ball is the actual second result. I'm not kidding, go pause the video, look at it. And she remains the subject of
Yeah.
ironic worship even today. So why did she have this effect on people? First, let's address the obvious. Her spare color palette and simple shape make her a perfect meme. You can see her in virtually anything. Very similar to this guy. Don't believe me? Okay. You thought this thing back here was a Lashana Ball? It's a pomegranate. Lashana granite. I rest my case. For reasons unrelated to anything we've covered so far, many people found Lashana Ball funny for the simple fact that, whether intentionally or not, she looked almost exactly like a certain type of low-effort porn that had been flooding DeviantArt for the last 20 years. And if you have no idea what I meant by any of that, then here's a quick lesson on circle tool inflation. To figure out whether or not Lashana Ball was fetish art, let's quickly go over some of the more unethical uses of Microsoft Paint. Bear with me here. So inflation, broadly put, is a fetish or fantasy that pertains to inflating parts of your body.